All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Vibration Translation Podcast. We are here today with Luke Vandergriff. He is an artist, a musician, a storyteller. And your little slogan is that you explore the good, the true, the beautiful through art, story, and music.
Brace for mystery.
Trying to get it together. And Luke has some wonderful music, and it's super inspirational, uplifting, positive, and also has some spirituality to it. And that's why I was interested in interviewing him today. He also has a new album out called Pepito and the Trashcans, which is, we're gonna get into that, but it's about this beautiful story about a boy that starts out with nothing and creates all of his instruments. So Luke actually created all of his instruments by himself, tunes them to 432 hertz, and yeah, it's an incredible story and musical journey. So Luke, would you like to add on anything to that intro?
No, I think you covered it all. That's pretty much what I am at the moment. So, yeah.
Awesome. Okay. So first question I wanted to ask, how long have you been an artist, or would consider yourself an artist, or started diving into, the creative process?
Yeah. So I grew up being very artistic. My mom was, she studied art in college, and we were homeschooled. And so, art was always something that was encouraged and a part of our lives as kids, but I never really saw it as a career. Um, and so I didn't really start diving into art uh, until it was probably like 2019. I was going through like a major identity crisis, and I decided that I was going to sit down and paint every day for a month. And I didn't have a lot of money, so I had like some like watercolor paper that I cut up into like little bitty sections, and I just painted on those little bitty, squares of watercolor paper, one a day. And it was just such a healing process. And it was, through that process of kind of rediscovering who I was in a different way, that I began to realize I'm an artist. Like, I've always been artistic. I just have never allowed myself to explore myself in that light. My ambitions were a little bit different growing up. Um, Part of it was because I grew up in a Christian family. My parents were pastors. And so, very early on, since I was like 10 years old, I had this really strong desire, this dream to be a missionary. And a missionary is basically, it's a catch-all term for anybody who does any type of religious service outside of their home country. Um, so when I kind of look back at it now, what was going on is that I was really, really fascinated with foreign countries, just different cultures and different languages since I was a kid. I was always fascinated with that. And then I saw, in a sense, a career path that would please my parents and please the community that I was in as a missionary. And and so I really latched onto that, since I was like 10 years old. And, I got to live that dream in a sense, I pursued that. And um, I don't know, I guess in my mind, I didn't see how art could play into that role of, mission work or religious work. Um, and well, I mean, we could go into it, the history of the church and how, in a sense, the church, for a while, the Protestant church kind of divorced art, whereas like the Catholic Church never did, but that's a whole nother long topic that we could discuss. But I kind of went down that rabbit hole of um, that just not putting a whole lot of importance on art because there was this much greater purpose, that was like evangelizing, which is trying to convince people that they need to believe the same things that we do. So that I went down that trail for a long time.
Basically, in that in the worldview you were brought up in, to be a missionary and spread the word of God was the like highest priority, or the thing that was seen as the best service you could do. So art kind of wasn't up on that priority list.
Exactly.
Okay, so I understood that well. So now I read on your website that, you believe that art aligns us with love and our divine nature. So how do you believe art does this? And especially like, since it seems like your worldview had to be shifted, or you had to re-explore the creative aspect of life to even find this out.
Yeah. So I guess to really answer the question is, how does art help align us with love and our divine nature? You kind of have to look into what is divine nature exactly. And so even though I would, I'm still coming from very much a Christian worldview. I'm a very open-minded person, and willing to receive from other religions and philosophies and perspectives now. But what I know best is still the Bible. And so I still kind of base a lot of my thinking on what's in the Bible. And so if you look at like the very first chapters of the Bible, or the book of Genesis, it's talking about the creation and how God created everything. He says, let there be light, and then he's creating water, and then he's creating the land, and then he's creating plants and animals. And then finally they get to humanity, and they decide, we're going to make humanity, and it says, in our image and our likeness. And so basically we have this picture of this extremely amazing, beautiful work of creativity, where God, assembles the universe. And then he says, now let's make humans just like us. And so what I get from that is that, our divine nature is linked to creativity. Like, you can't separate creativity and divine nature. Like, they're integral. And creativity is really a broad term. I wouldn't say that, creativity means being artistic. Art and creativity, like they go together, but art is not creativity, or creativity is not art. And so creativity could be, just fixing a problem, or it could be creating something, inventing a tool that makes your life easier, or whatever. So there's all different forms of creativity, and all of that is really great. And a part of our divine nature is to just create things. However, we tend to focus on, in our society, we tend to focus on things that are pragmatic or practical, especially since like the Industrial Revolution. It's like there's been this huge focus on what is practical. And so, you just look at our architecture, our architecture has become very bland. There's still some cool stuff going on in like Dubai and whatnot, but like, compare the architecture from before the Industrial Revolution to what it is now, or in the 20th and early 21st century. It's like it's bland. And so there was this major emphasis on practicality, pragmatism, and all of that is great, but it's not the whole. You know what I'm saying? It's not the whole picture. So God, when he created the earth and he created plants, he could have set up a completely pragmatic system, and, flowers didn't need to be pretty. The trees didn't need to be pretty. He could have made, this flat surface that, there were no mountains that you could look at and just stand in awe of their beauty. He could have just made the system completely practical and left it that. But God loves beauty. He is fascinated by things that are beautiful, and that's part of his discovery and his process. And so we as humanity, we've got to stop being so pragmatic at times and start to lean into the beautiful side of things. And that's where art comes in. Is it's art is not pragmatic. It's not practical. It really doesn't even work in this capitalist system that we have. It's like art belongs to a whole different type of economy, and it's it's almost like when you sit down to do art, you're being rebellious in a sense. You're rebelling against the pragmatism and saying, I'm going to do this not because it's going to feed my kids, not because, it's going to make my life, so much better, or, whatever. You're just doing it because there's just this part of you that needs to do it. And that part of you is part of the divine, your divine nature. And that, we need to create things that are beautiful.
So it's like the joy of being alive and being a creation versus just trying to survive and be in a capitalistic world and like, sell yourself or whatever, just to just be present with what is happening, what's occurring, and seeing the beauty that way rather than, what we're doing right now in the world.
Exactly. I feel like it's like humanity is still stuck in this survival of the fittest mentality. And, when you're in that type of mentality, it becomes very selfish and just, whatever you got to do to get on top, that's what you're going to do. But then art kind of pushes against that, and says, no, it's not just about surviving. It's about thriving. It's about, it's about beauty. It's about wonder. It's about awe. It's, enjoying this life that we have, and this opportunity that we have to be humans.
And there's also, I think in what you're saying, there's like this collaborative factor to art, where it doesn't become about who's better than who or whatever. It's like, let's come together and create more of that beauty to amplify more of it, rather than like, I'm alone and I'm trying to be better than you in this one thing. Then it's like, that doesn't even feel good,
Right. And as artists, I mean, we fall into that as well. Like I'm
Absolutely.
trying to be better than that artist, and that artist is trying to be better than me. But if you pay attention to yourself and to your art, you can feel the difference. You can feel the difference from creating art just out of this authentic expression of who you are and where you're at the moment, versus creating the art out of a spirit of competition. It's just totally different. I don't want to do the latter. I don't want to compete.
Yeah. And it's definitely hard to not think about competition in some sense, right? Because there's, all the time I'm faced with like, whenever I go to like the open mics, I'm like, oh my God, everybody's so beautiful. Everybody's so amazing. And I'm like, wow. But then I'm like, oh my God, what if I'm like super bad?
Yep.
So I definitely have that insecurity still, but it's like just, I guess, a shift of perspective to what feels better, which is
right.
Not the competition. I mean, competition
Right.
isn't like, we can still like be in competition, like, but not at such a like serious degree I feel like we are right now. It can be like a friendly, like, oh, like, let's like just improve, but it doesn't have to be like, because I'm going to be better than you.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a different energy.
Definitely. Totally different energy.
I wanted to get into some of your music, and I really like a lot of the lyrics in like all your songs. So I have some of them written down and I wanted to get into some of them. So before we get into your album, I wanted to start with a couple of your songs that are a little more spiritual, right? So one of them is Lovers of Leaving. And to me, when I listened to Lovers of Leaving, I thought it reflected like the power of alchemy through expression. Like in my perspective, that's how I approach it. Like it's like the power of alchemizing yourself through expression, the journey of becoming. Let me see. Like some of the lyrics that you have is destination is not our goal, destiny is where we are, always leaving, always arriving, and then we'll leave again. So I wanted to ask you, do you approach art as this alchemical or self-transformative process? Or just in general, how do you approach the creative process? Because that's what I got from that song, like in my perspective.
Yeah, I mean, as far as how I approach art, um, it's definitely an alchemy or a transformative process of just expressing in order to explore, I feel. It's kind of like I don't know if you do like stream of conscious journaling or something like that, but it's just like you sit down and you start writing whatever comes to mind for 20 minutes, and the first 10 minutes is just crap, it's just, whatever. But then you get into it and then all of a sudden there's like this click and like you begin to bring out this like really deep stuff from inside of you that you didn't even really know was in there, and I feel like art a lot of times is like that. You're just trying to authentically express what's inside and what needs to come out, but you don't even really know exactly what is in there and what is coming out. You're just letting it come out. And then, after it's kind of out there, you start to work with it and discover it and explore it and figure out, what it is that just happened, And yeah, that song, Lovers of Leaving, in a sense, that song was actually an artistic collaboration. Um, uh, One, because the song is actually based on a Persian Sufi poem by this poet who lived centuries ago named Abu Sa'id. And
Okay. I haven't heard.
yeah, so he's not a very famous poet. Actually, most people think that this poem was written by Rumi, but it wasn't by
Right,
Rumi.
Rumi's very
Yeah,
popular. Yeah, I know
Rumi's popular. And
Rumi.
I love Rumi. Rumi's amazing. But yeah, it's not Rumi. It's Abu Sa'id. And so a Turkish friend, she shared this poem with me, and it just resonated so deeply. And that the poem is basically contained in like the first verse.
What is it called?
And I don't know exactly what the name of the poem
Okay.
is, but it starts out saying, "Come, come, whoever you are, come." And in the English version, it says, wanderers, worshippers, lovers of leaving, come." The actual Persian, like the literal version from the Persian, is actually a little bit more harsh. It says, pagans, idolaters, infidels, come.
Okay. So everybody that did, yeah, because I noticed in one of the lines, like even if you've broken your vows 1,000 times, won't you come share?
Yep,
Yeah.
come. Yeah, and so what I feel like is happening in the first verse, and which is basically the poem, is that it's just inviting anybody and just whoever. It doesn't matter what path you're on, it doesn't matter where you're at. You are welcome to come and connect with the divine. You are welcome on this spiritual journey, and you're welcome to come and share and try again. You messed it up. It doesn't matter if you messed it up 100 times, 1,000 times, just come and try again. And it's just, I wanted to provide that's what I was getting out of the poem, and so I kind of wanted to express that through that first verse and then also in the chorus. But then the second verse, well, that was, I guess, my own, if you could say that it was my own, but I just kind of sat down and was like, well, what do I do for a second verse, And I was kind of fascinated by the English translation, and the term that it used, instead of infidel, it said lovers of leaving. And I was just kind of like fascinated, like, what does that mean? Like
Right.
whoever translated this poem was also like a really good poet. Like, cause it's not, I've also been a professional translator from Spanish into English. And like, I know how difficult it can be to translate, especially on a poetic level. But, like lovers of leaving, what does that mean? And then like this concept, it says, ours is not a caravan of despair. And actually in the Persian, it says ours is not a door of despair. But I was still kind of just fascinated with the English version, like a caravan, like what is that? And I started thinking about nomads, and like, nomads don't really have a particular destination that they're trying to get to and stay at. They're not trying to get from point A so that they can finally establish themselves in point B for the rest of their lives. They're just on this constant journey, and they will arrive at a place, and that was their goal for a month or two, but now after they've been there for a while, they move on. And I just kind of started to see ourselves as like these kind of like spiritual nomads, in a sense that it's not so much about trying to arrive to one place where you're going to finally be complete. I don't know if we'll ever be complete. Even after this life, after this human experience, we'll move on probably to something else.
What does complete mean to you?
Can you really define complete? I mean, if we're looking at the divine as infinity, eternal, it's like, how do you fill that up? You can't fill that up. And so honestly, like, I mean, it's like, I've pursued a lot of different dreams, and I've gotten to fulfill a lot of my goals and my dreams. But then it's like, once they're fulfilled, it's like, I'm still not complete. And so
There's another desire, dream.
Yeah. Another dream comes, and I end up seeing another aspect of my life that it's like, oh, well, I may have done really good in this area, but I'm still lacking in this area. So, it's just this constant moving and changing, and viewpoints that I thought were perfect for a time, and now I'm looking back and thinking, yeah, what was I thinking? Like it's time to move on. And I'm aware at this point, I'm aware that the words that I'm saying now may not be exactly what I believe 10 years from now. I may have moved on to something very different. And it's just, just being accepting of that kind of fluidity. And, we're constantly changing, and that's okay.
It's interesting to me because there's this, for me, there's this paradox where as we are, I also believe like we are the divine is through us, like we are an aspect or whatever, but like I would consider the divine or God as whole and complete, and we are also part of that. So we are also whole and complete while we are in this becoming.
Yeah.
But wherever we are is exactly what we're supposed to be. We're perfect in the moment. We're complete in the moment as we are in the becoming. So it's like, for me, it's like this paradox of both are happening at the same time.
Right. That resonates with me. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, that's cool. And as you were describing that, like the kind of the nomads, spiritual nomads, and bringing in people, like even if you've broken your vows, like come on, share. Do you feel like this was different than when you were being a missionary, like the viewpoint?
Well, yes. Part of, hugely because of the fact that I'm basing this off of an Islamic poem. So, as a Christian, it's kind of, we tend to be very kind of pushy about our viewpoint is the only viewpoint, the only world vision that is correct. Our doctrine is the only correct doctrine, and everyone else needs to convert to the way we believe. And and so yes, I was definitely pushing those boundaries, and kind of pushing back against that kind of mindset of I'm right and everyone else is wrong. And so yeah, just learning how to be more inclusive, um, was definitely a process that I was going through when I wrote that song.
Well, it's beautiful that you were able to put that into such like a beautiful like, and I definitely felt the message of the song while I was listening to it. It's very, very beautiful. And along with that, like when you were, well, I just wanted to go to this question. How do you feel while you're in the creative process? You were talking about kind of like automatic writing and then like going back and looking at it and exploring new parts of yourself. Do you ever feel discomfort with that? Do you feel like exhilarated? Is it a mix of everything? How do you navigate it and how do you have patience with yourself during that process?
Yeah, I would definitely say it's a mix of everything. Um, the creative process can be, it can be scary. Um, because sometimes you're just taking risks, you're trying things that you've never tried before, you're expressing things that you don't necessarily want to admit are there. Um, a lot of times, I don't know. But at the same time, it's exhilarating. When you finally like let go and just let what's inside of you start flowing out, it's exhilarating. It's life giving. You feel alive. Um, so yeah, that's what the creative process does for me.
And how do you have patience with yourself within that process? Because sometimes like you can have some automatic writing or whatnot out, and you can have like fragments of song, but then it's like, I don't know, am I inspired to put it together? Like, do you have to do it even if you don't feel like it? But then do you start feeling like how do you have patience with that?
Yeah, patience. That's a big one that I guess we're all still working on. But yeah, I mean, yeah, there are definitely times when it's like, I want to be creative and I sit down and I like, okay, I'm going to make something today. And the only thing that comes out is just this bland repetition of what I did, yesterday or a couple days ago or a year ago, and it's just kind of this, I don't know, eh, it's where I was, but it's not really where I'm at. And so there's definitely it sometimes it takes time, it to actually get to a place of authenticity where you can really actually express something fresh and new. And and yeah, there are days that it's just you just kind of have to realize this isn't happening today, and you just got to go do something else. Um, and so yeah, I mean, sometimes you just need to go out and stop trying to be creative and artistic, and sometimes you just need to go out and take a walk, get out in nature, or sometimes you just need to go, you know, wash the dishes or clean up your studio, organize your studio and do things that you don't necessarily want to do, you know, but but all of that kind of feeds into your creative process in little ways. And so, yeah, it's definitely a process of patience, because you don't necessarily know when you're going to be inspired. And then at the same time, you can't always wait to be inspired. You'll never really grow in your skill level. Like, if you're a painter, you can't, if you just wait to be inspired, then the inspiration will come, but your skill level may not be at the place where you need to be able to really express what that inspiration is trying to say, you know?
Yeah, that resonates with me.
And yeah.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you need to practice. And sometimes that practice is repetitive and it's boring and it's not, fun. Um, but and that's just another part of the process, but it's kind of like all of that, doing the things that you don't really want to do, like cleaning up your studio and getting organized, or whatever. um it's all in preparation for that moment when that inspiration comes, and then you're able to really flow with it, and and really accomplish something amazing, or at least amazing to yourself,
Yeah, that's all that
somebody else.
matters. I love
Yeah.
that. Yeah, I love that. Like it's the preparation, it's the whole time you're opening yourself up to the possibility of that coming through. And even like when you're sitting down and you're doing just the technical thing, I mean, you can make that fun somehow too. Like oftentimes I find that in the beginning, I'm like, I don't want to, like I'm kind of in a stuck energy, but then I move into it. And then all of a sudden, like, okay, now it's not. I'm warming up to it. But you just gotta like, yeah, sit down and have that dedication to that inspiration to come through. Yeah, create that environment for it. Very beautiful. Thank you for sharing. I wanted to go to another one of your songs. It's called "Awake in You." I reflected that it's like of realizing the creator's expression is alive with you, in you, coming through you. It's kind of what we were describing in the beginning. So I wanted to ask, I don't know how far you want to go into this, but either like what is your inspiration behind Awaken You, or is this song about some kind of spiritual awakening experience?
So the song, it's it's not based on like a major spiritual experience that I had, even though that's what the lyrics kind of look like. Um, it's really this song was just kind of really like kind of that patient process of just allowing things to be pieced together little by little. So like, I mean, I'd kind of been just, I'd been a, I had a ukulele for a couple of years, and that's kind of had become my main instrument. And this song is kind of just a piecing musically. It's a piecing together of a bunch of different riffs that I just kind of come up with just messing around and learning the chords on the ukulele. And then lyrically, it started out with the chorus, and I was just, I don't know. I just kind of got this chord progression, and I'm, playing, and that just like you want to express something, there's something deep inside of you that wants to come out, and you're wanting to connect with the divine, and so these lyrics just kind of came out. I am awake in you, you are awake in me, so let's come alive, let us shine, and I just started singing that, and it just resonated so deeply that I would just sit there and play that over and over and over again. And just, I just felt like I was connecting. It resonated with me. And then I noticed that, it resonated with other people as well. And but I had no idea what to do for the verses on that, And then it wasn't until I heard this Australian poet named Joel McCarrow, who does spoken word poetry, but he has like this album out, that's it's like him doing spoken word poetry but set to music. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, like that is fascinating. Like I'd never heard anything like that before." And so I was like, I wonder if I could do that. And so that's where I started to just kind of like sit down and write the lyrics to this song, like the verses, which is kind of more of like a spoken word poetry versus a song, you know. And it was just a matter of kind of letting it all come out, just like you know, this is what I feel like is inside and needs to be expressed. And I started writing it down, and of course I went through the editing process, but yeah, it was definitely a very creative process that happened over a number of years, seeing that song come
It's very
together.
interesting. Very interesting how like you needed, like, not that you needed, but like the hearing the poet Joel, like it made you all of a sudden like, oh, now that's in the inspirations and I'm going to go into this song. It's very interesting how that works. You never know where it's going to come from. It's good to be open. Yeah, I wanted to ask about also your other song, Under the Wonder. So this one, again, it seems like a very like personal transformation, or like, you know, one of the lyrics is, now I cannot deny the awe calling me home, like held in awe. I think it was there's a beautiful metaphor of like that transformation again for me as I was listening to it. And my question was, what is the awe you described that is calling you home?
Yeah, like how do you even answer that question? How is the what is the
Yeah, what
awe?
is the awe? Tell me about it.
So I mean, to be honest, what I wrote down is probably the best way I can explain
That
it.
makes
You know,
sense.
it's just that's the best I could do to define or to say what it is that's calling me home. That, you know, it's the awe, you know. So a little bit of a backstory on this song in particular, because this song is based off of a spiritual experience that I had. So it was many years ago. I don't know how long, over 10 years ago, but I had been having like these visions where I would like see myself like at the beach, and I would walk out into the water, and I would like, the goal was to walk out far enough that I actually would be completely submersed in the water. But every time I'd get up to like my neck, I would like, you know, start to like kind of panic and start swimming, and you know, like I couldn't allow myself to go under the water. And and then it was another experience where I was like praying, and I saw myself like I was being held over the ocean, and then I was just dropped into the ocean. And I went under the water, and when I'm under the water, I suddenly realized that I can breathe. Like I can breathe
Was this a
underwater.
vision you were having?
Yeah, it was like a
Okay.
vision I was having. And and so um I realized that I can breathe underwater, but then my instincts kick in, and it's like, no, 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 you got to go back to the surface. And so I go back to the surface, and I'm, you know, I'm swimming, and I was like, wait a minute, I just breathed underwater. Like, I got to try this out. And so I go back under the water, and I like, you know, I'm like forcing myself to try to stay under the water. And I'm like, I know that I can breathe underwater, but I'm still fighting with my instincts, my survival instincts that say, no, 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 go back to the surface. And as I'm fighting with this, I'm also kind of like just realizing that, man, if I can just let go of these survival instincts, you know, and that the old way of thinking that I can only breathe above water, there's a whole new world that I can explore. And so that happened like many years
Like
ago.
like an altered state, or was it just like something that happened for you?
I guess you could say it was kind of like an altered state. I was definitely awake during the process, and it wasn't like this overwhelming experience that I like was like paralyzed, and you know, all I saw was this. It was, in a sense, it was. I guess the way I would describe it is I activate my imagination and kind of surrender my imagination to God or the divine. And so it's like, you know, God, like I believe that our imagination is extremely powerful. We really do not understand how powerful our imaginations are in creating reality around us. But also our imagination is there for us to actually commune with source or God or the divine or whatever you want to call it, you know. I believe that there's an interaction that can take place between us in that field of the imagination. And so, yeah, I was kind of more of a little bit of a meditative, you know, state of mind, just, you know, sitting there still, waiting to see what would happen.
Did you have anything that helped you, like THC or anything else, or was it just like you by
Um,
yourself?
it's Yeah, no, I
Well, we
didn't
can
have
skip that if you don't want to
any
get
type
into
of
that.
chemicals or any
Yeah.
type of like herbs or anything like that. It was just me
Okay,
by
that's what I was
myself sitting
asking.
down, and taking the time to activate my imagination and kind of surrender that to the divine and see what would happen, you know?
Huh.
And
Wow.
yeah, so like,
That's
a
super
lot of
cool.
times when you're doing that, it's just your imagination, it's just like, yeah, I'm trying, and sometimes that's how you have to get started. So you just kind of just start imagining something, imagine yourself on the beach and feel the sand, feel the water, feel the breeze, hear the seagulls, just, use your imagination. And then once you kind of awaken your imagination, things will start to happen that you understand, or that's not really like, I didn't come up with that. Like, that wasn't me forcing this to happen. It's just it's like it's coming from another source. And
Yeah. That sounds like a shamanic journey. Like when they beat the drum or get themselves into some kind of trance state. Usually they use some kind of repetitive sound. That sounds like what you were doing, but just with your imagination, probably got into the
yeah,
theta brainwave or something like
yeah,
that.
I'm
And
sure I was probably
yeah.
in more of an alpha brainwave. From there, I mean, like, I just had that experience, and it was years later, that I kind of was starting to kind of go through this process of letting go of some of my absolutes, and this kind of I have to be right and everyone else is wrong kind of viewpoint. And I had started this English conversation group, with people from all over the world, and we got on the topic of religion. And this one friend in Iran, who's Muslim, uh, she she's mentioned, she's like, well, religion to me is like a boat. And I don't know if she came up with this or she got it from someone else, but she's like, religion is like a boat to me. And, you know, it's great for getting from point A to point B safely, and everything's, nice and neat, and you stay clean and whatnot. And then she said, but if you really want to know God, you've got to learn how to swim. And that just hit me like, oh my gosh, because I connected it back to that vision that I had like years before, you know? And it's like, oh my gosh, like that's that's what I got to do. I've got to jump out of my boat. My boat represented like all of these absolute structures of, this is exactly how it has to be, and this is the way we describe God, and this is what, eternity is, and this is what hell is, and this is what heaven is, and this is what, and all these definitions that I grew up believing. But it was like, no, now it's actually time to start questioning that. And so that's kind of like where the first verse comes in, a sea of questions, an ocean of mystery. Is just like, it's time to dive in and just start asking all these questions that I've never allowed myself to ask before, and just see where it takes me. And and then, like, in the verses where I'm saying, embraced by mystery, I or the all calling me home, like, it's just like, I don't have answers, you know and I'm learning to be okay with not having all the answers. And it's a beautiful place to be.
Absolutely, I love that. And I wanted to start getting into your album, Pepito and the Trashcans. So if you could introduce us.
Right. Okay. So the album Pepito and the Trashcans is 5 songs, and they're all recorded with bottles, cans, random objects, and homemade instruments. So these are instruments that I've actually made myself, mainly from, repurposed materials, so things that I found, or things that were in my parents' garage, or, just, scrap wood and nails and stuff like that. And, but the reason behind the album is that these songs are actually part of a story that I tell. So, Pepito and the Trashcans is actually a story about this little boy in Bolivia who really, really wants to play music, but, all these things happen, there's, scarcity, there's misfortune, and they all stand in the way of him fulfilling his dream. And so he kind of goes through this process of really having to overcome that not enough syndrome, not enough money, not old enough, not, whatever. And, but he overcomes it with this spark of inspiration that says, hey, what if I made music with bottles? And so he starts playing percussion with bottles. And then from there, it kind of moves on to, making music with all kinds of different things. And so in the story, I perform the songs as a part of the story. So it's kind of a musical story time.
And what is the power or purpose of storytelling?
Oh gosh, storytelling is huge. Um, Storytelling, I mean, it shapes the way we think. And the way we think, our subconscious, is what creates our reality. And so to me, storytelling, it's not just something fun to do around a campfire. I mean, it can literally be reality shaping. Um, and so I don't take it lightly. I'm not the kind of guy who's going to be telling ghost stories, you know, just to, scare some kids or whatever, like I take it very seriously because, the stories that we tell ourselves are going to shape our subconscious and then that's going to shape our reality. And so, with Pepito and the Trash Cans, um, a lot of it is just, in a sense, self-expression and exploring my own journey, and discovering myself and this creative process. So a lot of the emotion that's in Pepito and the Trash Cans, it was very easy for me to act that out because I'm feeling it. I'm going through it. Um, but at the same time, there is a bit of intentionality in that I want to help kids get over that not enough factor. I want to help people have a healthy self-esteem where they put off that victim mindset and start taking on the mindset of a person who is able to overcome any obstacle. And so that's kind of what I'm intentionally trying to communicate through Pepito and the Trash Cans.
I really appreciate how you went about the story of Pepito and the trash can because it really resonated with me in a sense of, you feel like you don't have enough things, you feel like you're not good enough, or like for me personally, I always felt like, oh, I need to create something really amazing or else like it doesn't really matter and whatever. But like for this to actually be this process of transformation and also acknowledging what you have and acknowledging then yourself that, oh, I do have this power to create with what I have. I don't need just more given to me. Like I don't need all these like top quality instruments to make something really cool. You know what I
Right.
mean? I can actually I have that power within myself to create, and then I can actually find joy and spread joy with that and actually inspire other people. Like for example, like literally made your own instruments. Pepito in the story made his own instruments, yeah?
Right.
And you have that one song called Bottles Only where in the story you were saying how Pepito he kind of like he started kind of taking off, people were listening to his music, but then he kind of lost his spark again. And so to regain the spark, he decided to limit himself to just bottles. Okay, how can I make music with just bottles? How can I make instruments out of just bottles? So can you describe that connection between limitation and creativity?
Yeah. Limitation and creativity, they're they're in a constant relationship with each other. I mean, it's, kind of like, opposites attract, and it's kind of like one balances out the other. Um, in creativity, sometimes you want to have just all the resources and everything and just be able to do whatever you want. But sometimes you're not ready for that, really. And you need those limitations in order to mature. And like I'm just kind of thinking like even when I look back at like the Bible and like the story of the creation and then everything, like God gave humanity like this like free range, of the universe or the planet, and it's like go do whatever you want with it, and then they totally messed it up, and so he starts limiting, things for them. He takes them out of the Garden of Eden, and then he starts limiting how much time they can actually live, and just different ways that he started limiting humanity back to a place where they had to start now, figuring out how to really appreciate what they have right now, because they don't have as much time as they used to have to be able to figure things out and to do things with it. And so I don't know, just, you know, you find yourself limited, and we can get so stuck, you know, daydreaming about, if we had this, if we had that, if I were this, if I had this talent, if I, and you can really get stuck there, but it's really just about coming back to the present and realizing what you have. And if you can learn to appreciate what you do have, be thankful for what you do have, then all of a sudden you start to see where things open up, and creative avenues or pathways that you can start taking to actually move forward. So it's like, with a podcast, you could be like, oh, if I knew the right people,
If I knew
if I
how to do
had,
the audio,
yeah, right, yeah,
if I had a better computer.
right. If I had a better computer, if I had a better camera, if I,
Hmm.
and all these things, and, there's a lot of limitations, on you or whoever wants to start a podcast in the beginning, but you don't realize that, well, you do have a phone, you do have this, you do have that, you do know somebody who could talk a little bit about what you want to talk about. So just get started in the right direction. And then as you steward well what you have, then things start to open up and you begin to get more and more. And then you have to be careful, because yes, things can take off and things can be going well. And then, you know, it seems like everything's working for you, but then all of a sudden you realize that you're living the dream, but you're not enjoying the dream. And that's kind of where Pepito came to, is he broke through those limitations once, and everything started to open up for him. And then all of a sudden he realized that he's living the dream, but he's not enjoying it. And so once again, he had to like reconsider those boundaries and say, you know what, maybe I need to set some boundaries on myself again to force that creativity to flow again, you know?
Yeah, so you were saying how Pepito he wasn't enjoying the process anymore at one point,
Yeah.
because what were you saying, that he almost had like too much available to him, that he almost just wasn't using his creativity anymore?
In my mind, what's going on is, yes, he started out really poor, and that's why he was forced to make his own instruments. But then eventually, he's created so many different instruments, and he's actually getting gigs, and he's making money, and he's got all these resources. But it's just, after a while, the music that he's playing is just the same old music over and over and over again. And I've experienced that myself. Like, I kind of grew up in, I wouldn't say a poor family, but, my dad, you know, I really admire him for this, is he he actually turned down a job in the 80s, the early 80s, that was going to pay him $100,000 a year. That's a lot of money back in the
Right.
80s, so that he could pursue his dream of becoming a pastor. And I really, really admire that. But then it also very much sets myself and my siblings up for a very, very different lifestyle than what we could have had. And so we kind of grew up with this mindset of just scraping, you know, to get by, just barely making it. And, everything is so limited. We never have the resources that we want. But, so, I've gone through that process as well of just learning to work with what I've got, you know, but also, since I've persisted in that process of working with what I've got, it starts to expand. And I've got a whole bunch of instruments, and I got this loop station. And so with the looper, I can play all of my instruments. And even still, I get to this place where I feel like everything I play is just bland and boring and the same old, and I'm not producing anything new. And that's a really scary place to be when you have it all, but it's just not fulfilling. And it's definitely a time when you have to reassess things. And sometimes that means you have to reassess your boundaries and, start just exploring limitations. Just go back to limitations, like self-imposed limitations, in a sense. Is
And it's
is
funny because like it's not meant to limit you. It's just meant
right.
to it's meant to expand you. It's interesting.
Exactly. Exactly. And yeah. And I feel like that is something that could be applied to all different areas of our life, even spirituality. Is that, sometimes we're trying to get out of this, break through this mindset of like we're these small little limited humans that, we got to break out of that mindset and realize that, man, we are sons of the divine. We are connected to infinity. We are, so much more than that. But even, you know, like, what if some of us are actually like, we've already gone through this human experience before and we've already broken out before, but then we decided, you
Come
know what, I
back.
think I want to go back,
Yeah.
you know, and try it again. Like we got, you know, I don't know, like it's
I understand that. Yeah,
even
I've heard
even
that
just
before.
even just thinking about like Jesus Christ as the Son of God. I mean, he had to be a master of limitation to do what
Hmm.
he did. He, like, it even like describes him like they come to like they've decided to crucify him, and he's like, you guys have no idea, like, the power that I have. I could call down a legion of angels and just, blow you guys away, but that's okay, let's do it. And it's like, whoa, like the amount of self-control, and that there's something beautiful in that self limitation. Like, that you could just do something totally amazing that would blow everyone's mind, but then you decide to just tone it down and do something simple. Like, yeah.
It's very
I don't know.
interesting. I mean, it's like for me, it looks like I mean, I do want to get through these questions, but just real quick,
Yeah, go
it
for it.
looks like, we are all like in my understanding so far. Again, it can change, like you said, yours can change too. But in my understanding, we're like we are not like fully just God, but we are the nature of God in a sense, expressing itself in a human form, right? And then it's like this human form has its like we have to go use the bathroom, we have to eat food, we have to like it has all these things that are like annoying, but but then you can find the joy in like yeah, I'm still trying to find the joy in being human because it's like it's weird,
Right.
man. It's like a whole
Yeah.
thing, you know what I mean? But then it's like, okay, how do I learn to be in this way? And how do I find the beauty within the limitation of like, I'm not just some angel flying in the sky that doesn't have to deal with using the bathroom or like having to
Right.
eat food or just stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I
And then you kind of
totally agree.
strength, yeah, you kind of strength you find and just new kind of possibility because of this experience in this way. Yeah. So another one of your songs on the album was called Keep Your Head Up. And
Yeah.
some of the lyrics, I feel like we went over this a little bit, but in the lyrics, you have believe in the goodness and you'll experience beauty. You've got to know you have access to infinity. So those are two different lyrics I pulled out. And you also said that you're a guy that had a lot of dreams come true in terms of like getting to travel so many countries and all that you did. I don't know everything about you, but for yourself. So how do you feel like these for me it seems like you're putting these concepts of what you like works for you in your life and your discovery of your own creative process and all that into the music. Like that's how I perceive it. Yeah.
Right.
And
Yes.
how do you feel like what do you mean by we have access to infinity? Does that mean is that going back to the divine nature and also like believe in goodness and you experience beauty? How has that manifested in your life?
Yeah. So like, we have access. You have to believe that you have access to infinity. Like, and in a sense, what I'm saying is that you have to realize that you're not just this limited human being. Like, there's like you have access to God, you have access to the divine or source or whatever, and I mean, it is there. You just have to discover it. Um, but so yeah, just believing that you're much, much more than just this limited life form. Um, and then believe in the goodness and you'll experience beauty. Um, it like I wrote this lyrics kind of this was like the last song that I wrote for this album. And it was kind of a much more intentional, like, I should have at least 5 songs, for this album. So I better sit down and write another one. And so I was kind of basing it on like the advice that Pepito's father gives him and his siblings, which is um keep your head up. And to me, that is a matter of, just it's posture. I don't really even know how to describe it exactly, but it's posture. Like I remember like about a year and a half ago, you know, we'd moved back to the US, and I'm trying to be an artist here in the US because I felt like that's what that was my purpose, and that's what God was asking me to do. His latest challenge for me is what it was. And so um
Yeah.
like go try to be an artist in the US.
Oh
Like
my
you figured it out in
gosh.
Bolivia, now do it in the US. It's like, what the crap, like, okay. So yeah, and at first things went great, and then things went downhill, and it was not so great. And then we were trying to move out of my parents' house, and we had applied for this rental house, and we got rejected. And I just found like I was, you know, for it was almost like this very like kick in the gut, like just like it's because you're stupid,
Mm.
stubborn, trying to be an artist, you won't go get a normal W-2 job, you know and that's why you're rejected from the rent, and you can't move out of your parents' house. And it's like, it was I just found myself in this position, like literally just this bent over position, just feeling like just the worst. And actually, like, I stood up from that, and I ended up getting like this crick in my neck that lasted for months. And like I was going to the chiropractor, and they were working on it and everything, but it was really hard to recover from that. And so, but it's just like that position, like the position you put yourself in, your perspective is going to create a reality around you, for good or for worse, depending on what your posture is. So keep your head up, to me, is just like, try to keep a positive attitude even when things are not going well. Um and uh and then Pepito's father says, and then be thankful for what you do have. Don't focus on what you don't have. And that's just kind of like going back to that topic of limitations and, learning to steward well what you do have and appreciate that. And, and then, believe that good things are happening because everything works out for the good. And that is kind of based off of like a Bible verse, that where it says something to the effect of all things work out for the good of those who love God. And so it's just, yeah, like I found that those principles, like I've seen them at play in my life, whether I did them correctly or I did them wrong. I can definitely look back and say, okay, I definitely did not do that well, and this is the result. But then I can also look back at other things that have happened in my life, tragedy or misfortune, or just, things that happened that were not working out in my favor. And, I've reacted well. I've kept my head up. I've remained thankful for what I had. And I believe that no matter what's happening right now on the surface, good things are happening and they're working out for me. I just don't see it yet. So for example, I started working on Pepito and the Trashcans in Bolivia, and I performed it for a couple of children's homes there. And then COVID hit. Like this was like my
Mm-hmm.
huge plan of, like
Yeah.
I'm now going to take
Yeah.
this performance to all these children's homes in Bolivia all over, you know, and then COVID hit and that completely shut everything down. So we couldn't do that. And that was really frustrating, but actually 2020 was actually a wonderful year for me. Because I just kept my head up, I just tried to maintain a positive perspective and be thankful. And it was a great year. It was not, for me, it was not traumatic.
You didn't let
Um,
the not going to plan get to you.
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that got shut down, like I was holding an open mic night in one of the public squares, and we had plans to travel and, do concerts and, different communities and stuff like that. And all of that got shut down. And it was hard at first, but then it's like, well, okay, let's focus, let's work on music, So I ended up releasing several songs in 2020, And then, 2021, we feel that God tells us to move to the US, which I was totally against, you know. But then, we do this. I'm scared because I have no idea what's going to happen financially for us.
Now,
And
when you
we,
said that you felt like God was telling you to come to the US, was it just like a knowing inside you, just like, okay. I think I talked to you before. You said it's like just like
yeah,
some like thought that comes into your head that's not from you. You're just like, I
kind
have
of,
to do it.
yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, it's definitely been a process, a relationship that's grown between me and God or the divine. And, there's been times when I ask God for a sign before I make some huge decision, like, moving from one country to another. Um, and in a lot of those times, I feel like, God has been like, okay, I'll give you a sign, you know, and he'll do something that's like just one of those synchronicities that's like, it's like kind of like, but like a major synchronicity. It's like, okay, yes, this is definitely God speaking. This time it was not so much that case because I've already been in this relationship with God for pretty much all my life, and it's kind of like I know when he's speaking. I can tell the difference now. I know the difference between me and him, me just being selfish for what I want and then hearing him. And so it wasn't really like this I didn't really have any huge major signs. There was some small thing that happened that was kind of like, okay, yeah, God is pointing me in this
You just
direction.
know. Yeah, you
Yeah,
just know how
it
he
was just a
communicates with
knowing.
you.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and that's just something I can't tell you how to do it. It's you're just gonna have, people just have to figure it out on their own. But
Yeah.
but yeah, so like we came. I ended up getting this huge mural job that that was something that I did with my kids. Is I sat them down before we moved here, and I was like, okay, guys, we're going to imagine Daddy painting on walls because I wanted to be a muralist.
Yeah.
And so I ended up getting this huge mural job with this other artist, Dan Nelson, who has been a major, like he is amazing. He's an amazing artist. He's also been a great spiritual mentor for me as well. And so I got to work on these massive mural project for 10 months, working alongside Dan, learning from the master, you know,
What's his
and it
full
was just
name?
awesome. Dan Nelson. You should definitely look
Dan
him up.
Nelson. Okay. I
Yeah.
will.
But so I mean that was awesome. And then that ended. That project ended and it's like, what am I gonna do now? And so then that's when I kind of got the idea of, well, what if I redid Pepito and the Trashcans? And I, start doing it now for an American audience. So I had to change things up a little bit because I had, initially I had killed the mother in the first, she died at childbirth and there,
Oh, that's what I thought that
yeah,
happened when I was listening, but then I realized that's not what happened. I was like,
yeah.
oh, but yeah.
In the first version, yeah, she dies in childbirth and then the
Hmm.
father like gets paralyzed and it was just
It's very sad.
much more horrible. It was much more horrible because I was speaking to kids at children's home that had already been through hell.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's like, and then I got to the US and I realized, oh no, these kids they're not ready for that. So I changed it up.
Okay.
But so yeah, I started working on this and then I I applied for the Artists in Schools program with the United Arts Council of Lake County. And I was totally sure of myself. Like they're gonna
Right.
love it. They're gonna love
Yeah.
it. And because this is so creative and I am a person that I tend to pat myself on the back, like I think I'm amazing.
You should.
A little too no but a little too prematurely, like
Okay.
I don't know, like the first song I write I'm like, oh my gosh, this 4-chord song is amazing, and it's like, yeah, now that I look back on it, it's like, yeah, nice try. But so anyways, like I apply and I get rejected.
Mm.
And that was another just like, low blow, just like, what in the
Like,
world?
what do
How
you
could they
mean?
Yeah,
Right.
I was angry. I was kind of like, what in the I have over 7 years of classroom experience as an English teacher, dealing with kids in Bolivia. Like, I have, this super creative story and the creative, the instruments that I made and all of this stuff. Like, what do you mean I'm not ready? And they never gave me any other feedback other than you're not ready.
You're
And
not
it was
ready to
just
work
like,
with kids and teach them music?
right. Yeah. It's like, what are you talking about? Like, I was angry. And, but then I could have stayed angry and I could have stayed like, like frustrated with this, like it's not working. And I could have moved on and gotten a regular job or something like that,
Just gave up on the thing. Just
Yeah, I
like,
just gave
if
up
they
on
don't
it. But
accept me, like, what is this?
yeah, but I kind of went back to know, like, what is my sole purpose? Like, what do I feel like the divine is calling me to? And I feel like this is the direction I have to go. And so I pushed forward with it. And I was talking to my sister-in-law who works at the Clayton Center. And, I started asking her about, like, well, you guys like are, curating artists and bringing people in. And I'm start asking like, well, how long does a typical show run for? She's like, oh, we like typically a show runs 90 minutes. And I'm started thinking, how could I turn Pepito and the Trashcans into a 90-minute show? And so that's how, like, the whole second half of the story was not even a part of the story in the beginning, and it just really took me through a much deeper creative
Mm.
process of going beyond just that initial spark of success that Pepito had in the first half of the story, and then starting to explore, well, what happens after that first little hint of success, which I have been through,
Yeah. That's like what
like,
happened with you. Yeah.
right,
That's
exactly.
interesting.
And so like that, that mural, those huge murals that we got to do for 10 months working with Dan Yeah.
Yeah,
And
so it's like
so,
back to the beginning when we were talking about
yeah,
just furthering going into the creative process and really sitting with what you have and seeing how you can further develop it. Yeah.
right. And so now I'm reapplying with the United Arts Council to hopefully get into schools, and I'm actually going to be performing um not next week but the following week, so like 2 weeks from now in a school. It's kind of like a test run
Awesome.
to see if I can get approved this year. But I am so thankful now that they rejected me, because it pushed me to get better. It pushed me to
Hmm.
further develop the story. And so now, yes, kind of one of my main focuses is getting into schools, but now I have a product or a presentation that I think I can get into theaters.
Hmm.
And I could possibly potentially be, traveling up and down the East Coast doing this show, and potentially making more money. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. That's, it's part of the factor, but it's not like the main motivation behind it.
Do you feel
But
like throughout your journey, like, cause I know like money's like a thing. Everybody has a different relationship with money. It's like a big one over here. Like,
yeah,
how do you trust like that? Okay, I want to do this thing, but I don't know if it's gonna work. How am I gonna still have food? You know?
like I guess like I've said, I'm a guy who's had a lot of dreams come true. And those dreams came true because I wasn't pursuing stability and, you know, you know, lots of money or things like that. I was pursuing the dreams that things I was passionate about, the things that I really wanted to do, you know. And here I am, maybe not in the best situation that I could imagine myself in. I'm still living with my parents at the moment, like that's, well, not what I want, but I have a roof over my head, you
Right.
know. I have, food. I'm making it, you know. In Bolivia, I mean, it was, you know, we did not have a lavish lifestyle at all. I mean, we didn't even have air conditioning or heating. It was, we I felt guilty going to the grocery store and buying myself a bag of coffee because I was the only one in the family who drank coffee. And,
Mm,
that's money spent on me that was just for selfish reasons, and it's like, but it's like at the same time, I was fine. I learned how to be comfortable without certain luxuries and just be okay with it, because I was still getting to do stuff that I was passionate about. I was still getting to have a positive impact on people's lives. And that's what meant more to me than having lots of money or luxuries or stability. And so that's kind of where I'm at again, in another place where things are kind of unstable and I don't know what's going to happen. But you know what? I'm just gonna go for it, you know, see what happens.
you keep going for it. Yeah,
Yeah,
and you will. I believe that you will always be like provided for as long, you very much so following the guidance, the heart, So
right.
there's just no way that you're gonna trust God and he's gonna have you be homeless. That's not gonna happen. Like you're gonna have what you need to do what you
Yeah,
need to do.
right,
Like I
right.
believe that. That's you know.
That's definitely, yep. That's definitely it. Is just learning to trust. There's a song that I'm still in the process of recording. Um, it's I think it's going to be called Dance on the Wire.
Okay.
But this song is based off of another vision that I had, where I was kind of in this very I was very depressed, probably somewhat suicidal. um Things were not going well for us in Bolivia. Like we had started a language institute. Like I had recently come out, like kind of quit being trying to be a missionary, like quit trying to work with churches. And I felt like God had told me very specifically, your place of influence is not in the church, which blew me away because that's what I've been trying to do and
Mm-hmm.
be all my life.
It's like a
So
whole story that you had to re-envision for. Yeah, that's big.
yes,
Yeah.
I had to shift everything, like everything just shifted for me. And so then we got this idea of maybe like, starting a language institute. And so we moved to another city where we started this language institute. And again, there was like some initial success, but then it just wasn't really carrying its weight. It wasn't producing enough money to be sustainable. And people just, I wanted to kind of fuse language and art together in a very creative way because I was so tired of trying to teach English the way you do in schools.
Right.
And some of my ideas were really, really good, but people aren't used to it. Like they still want that same
Mm,
old structure. And so it just wasn't working, you know. And I was frustrated with it, and I wanted to get out of the business. I was tired of being an English teacher or a language teacher, and I was frustrated with everyone just looking at me as or appreciating me for my language skills. It's like, oh, Luke is a native English speaker, so he's going to wave his
yeah.
magic gringo wand over our kids and make them speak English. And it's like,
That's not
no,
what I want to be seen at, or like,
right.
that's not
I
your
was,
thing.
it's not my thing. And like, I know other people who are Bolivian or who are like, I have this one Iranian friend who teaches English, and he's an amazing teacher. He may not speak English as well as I do, but I swear he is a much better teacher than I am, and
Mm,
he loves it. That's his
yeah,
thing.
because he loves it.
And I sit down to pray, and I, just kind of give my imagination over to God and see what happens, right? And so I see myself in like a circus tent or something, and I'm holding on to this tower, and uh the tower, like I just knew it represented like everyone's expectations of me. So I have like my church and everything in the US that expects me to be a missionary. And then I have, everyone, all my friends and people in Bolivia who expect me to be an English teacher. And I'm just like clinging onto this tower, and I'm looking down, and I'm feeling like really scared of heights and everything. And like, I don't know, just really, really insecure. And then I figure out that I'm actually on like a tightrope platform. So there's another tower on the other side, and there's this rope between me and this other tower. And then I see Jesus on the rope, and he's like telling me, kind of like telepathically or whatnot. He's just kind of like doing this, but as he's saying, come, it's like he's communicating to me, and he's saying, come, follow your passions.
Wow.
And I'm like, what? Like my passions? Like nobody's gonna pay me to do that.
Right.
Like, I'm feeling like, man, I want to go be creative and just explore. Like I don't even know what I want to do. I just want to be curious and explore things. I
Right.
don't have like this
Yes.
set
Yes.
dream of I want to be the best artist, or I don't want to be the best painter in the world, or I want to be the best musician. I don't know what I want to do. I just want to explore. And and I'm like, Jesus, that's crazy. Like, you know, the church is
That's a good
the
line. Jesus, that's crazy.
yeah. Well, yeah, we kind of have that kind of relationship, and he doesn't mind at all. But it's like, I'm thinking like, if I start pursuing the arts or whatever, the church is going to dump me. Like they're going to stop supporting me, and that's kind of where our main source of income was coming from at the time. Was the church in the U.S. that supported me. And I'm just thinking, yeah, they're not going to tolerate this. I've already quit going to church, and I'm a missionary. Like that's,
Mm,
and then, I'm not following through with this other project that I had pitched to them about, starting a language institute, and it's like, man, like I'm just going through all these doubts and fears, and then like, my friends, my wife, and everyone who expects me to be an English teacher, like, what are they going to say? But eventually in the vision, I take Jesus by the hand and I walk out on the rope. And at first, like it's, I'm wobbly and I'm trying to maintain my balance and whatnot. And, but like we get out into the middle of the rope, and I start to get actually really comfortable. you know? And so like we kind of start like kind of like jumping up and down and like playing on the rope, and like it's like, hey, like this is all working out. Like I got this figured out. And then all of a sudden I fall off and I land in this net, you know,
Mm.
and it's like at first like I felt that like that kind of like that gut feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm falling. But then all of a sudden I landed in the net and I realized I'm okay. Like I fell off, but I'm okay. And so I climb back up the tower and I try again. And I actually came back to this vision. Like I revisited it, which is something that I think you can do as well when you have these experiences in your imaginations, that you can kind of like go back to it and relive it and then see where it takes you again. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But like there was another time that I went back and it was just like, I really want to revisit, what God is trying to speak to me through this. And then this time I'm on the tower again and I go out on the rope and I just run to the other side. And I get to the other tower, you know, and I'm like on the other tower and I'm just kind of like, excited, patting myself on the back like, good job, Luke. You made it all the way across, which kind of in a sense to me represented that I left behind those expectations of what people wanted of me, and I just crossed and I went straight for what I was passionate about, and I made it across. But then I look back and I see Jesus like standing on the wire waiting there, and he's like, yeah, I think you missed the point. And he's like,
Wow.
come back out on the wire. And so like the
Mm.
song that I'm writing, that I'm working on, it's about learning how to live in the tension between reality and dream, learning how to live in the tension between grace and law, or work and rest, and um just it's about balance, you know.
Wow. Wow. Just well, first of all, the whole like message of of the vision is really really cool because it's like yes, you are. It's like when I think of us being humans on Earth, like we're in between like the the mystical, the spiritual, and we're also like on Earth, we're physical. So we're
Right,
how do we do in between that? So
right.
and also how it's just like incredible how you're getting into this like imaginary space. Like, can you talk more about like how you get yourself in there and like because that's just I'm super
Sure.
like interested in that.
So I actually started doing this with my kids a couple of years ago. Unfortunately, they're still kind of like, "Oh, dad, like, we don't want to do meditation. We don't want to do this."
Uh-huh.
But even they would have like some kind of cool experiences when they would like actually like kind of give themselves to it. But like so basically like you just want to sit still. You want to get comfortable and just be in a place where you can just be still, be private. And if you can do like some a little bit of breath work just to kind of like calm yourself down, you know and relax, feel your body, feel your breath, just get calm, and then just activate your imagination. And that could mean anything. With my kids, like since we're kind of like big like Marvel fans, and we had seen like Doctor Strange, and like
Mm-hmm.
so
Yeah.
like Doctor Strange is learning how to work with the mystical realms and
Yes.
stuff, and they put him in this training space called the mirror dimension.
Yes, I remember I watched that.
Okay, so I told my kids like we're gonna go into the mirror dimension, and basically what I was just doing
I
is
love
just
that.
trying to activate their imaginations, and I tell them like just imagine yourself in a place just wherever you want to go. And I would do this for myself, and for me it would, in my imagination it would kind of manifest as like this really big field, and usually there's like a stadium in the background, which probably speaks of my wanting to be a great, amazing musician or whatever. I
Mhm.
don't know. it's it's interesting to kind of analyze some of the things in your
Yeah,
subconscious that come up. But yeah, there's usually like, yeah, like just this field, there's the stadium over there, there's the ocean on the other side, but it's this space where you can do anything in. You can create
right.
anything you want. You can walk on air if you want to. Just anything that you can imagine, you can create. You can do it, and it just kind of opens just practicing that and just creating things for the sake of creating things. And it's completely in your imagination. So I mean, it's no one else is really going to see it. Um, and it's it's just cool. It's one of those kind of artistic things. It's not pragmatic at all. Like it's not going to, you know, you're not necessarily like you have to experience this amazing divine revelation or anything like that. You're just being playful, and that's another one of my core values is playfulness.
Right.
Is that like you look at some of my songs, like, some of them are really super deep or really raw and just letting out the emotion. And then others are just like, Pepito and the Trashcans. It's like for kids, like
Yeah.
it's playful. And um, so anyways, yeah, just be playful. And, you know, if somebody else shows up in your imagination, whether that's Jesus or an angel or someone else, just let it happen. You don't necessarily have to force anything. I mean, you can force, yeah, I mean, you can. I mean, you can create whatever you want in this realm. But then I would say, if you're if another being or entity enters that space, um you know, most likely it's because you've invited it into that space.
So do you
Um,
have like an intention going into the active imagination? Like, okay, I want to connect with Jesus or God.
mhm.
Do you have that going into it?
Sometimes, a lot of times, I'm just going in to just be playful and practice. But then, yes, there are times when I have specifically sat down wanting to connect with the divine, and a lot of times nothing happens.
Hmm.
And that can be really frustrating, because that's just the way we are. We want to have control over things and we want to be able to connect when we want to connect.
But not when it's supposed to
And
happen or whatever.
yeah, so that's why I just encourage people to go be playful first, you know, and then just allow it to happen more naturally. If it happens, it happens. If something takes over and you start having like this crazy vision, then just go with it. And a
Hmm.
lot of times, at least in the way I feel about it, I mean, it happens differently for other people. For some people, it's like the divine or their spirit guide or whatever takes over and they don't really have much control.
Yeah.
You know, that's never been the case for me. Um, that's never been the case for the mother of my children. Like she used to have like these crazy amazing dreams and visions and all kinds of stuff, and like she never tried to make any of it happen. It would just happen.
Hmm.
She could like, be praying for someone and be like channeling like just very specific details. And for me it was always like I was pursuing this, trying to figure it out, trying to learn. um and with me, like as far as visions go, like I find like I might start off with like a very intentional imagery, that I'm a setting that I'm in, like maybe at the beach, just, feeling the sand underneath my feet, feeling the water. And then I'll feel something shifting, like something kind of pulling me towards a different topic, you know. Maybe it could be something really weird that you're just not expecting. I don't know. And I'm learned to just kind of go with it and just see what happens. And it may just look like, just a mess of things that you're not really, understanding, but you just kind of stick with it. And then eventually you kind of start to settle into this new setting or these new things that are happening that you're not really controlling. and you're just kind of observing and responding, or responding to what's happening, but you're not controlling it.
I call that
And
the interactive space. So,
yes.
yeah, personally, I mean, I had like ayahuasca, and when I took it, like probably my first or second time, it went in because I was very insecure about like, oh, my ability to like interact, and it's like, what am I here for? What's the point of me, you know? But it's like the point is to play and to have be in that interaction. Like you are part of the entire interaction that's going on. You know what
Right.
I mean? So yeah.
Right. Yeah. So for me, it was something that I could easily stop if I wanted to get out. But there was always like the invitation to keep going, you know, and I would, so yeah, like, for me, it's never been a thing of like something else took control and I couldn't help it. It was just always a thing of, you know what, if I don't like this anymore, I can get out of it. But I always kind of felt like that push from the divine saying, come on, don't you want more? Don't you want more? Can you stay a little
Yeah.
bit longer? Um, and then eventually, like, I don't know if it's that the message stopped and there was nothing else to tell me, or if I just got tired and I don't know, it would eventually kind of end, you know.
To me, this exercise, did you get this from somewhere, or did you start doing it by yourself?
It's been kind of a years of, you know, little drops of information from other people and other teachers and stuff. There was this one lady called Patricia King, who is like a very like she's somewhat known amongst like the Christian world, like, well, the Christian world that is very mystical and into connecting with the divine. Yes, she's known, and she had some teachings, and she had some very good practical teachings, which for the most part, like you don't find that. Like there's people who have like these amazing prophetic gifts, or they, channeling or healing and whatnot, but they can't really explain how it happens.
Mm-hmm.
But she actually had like this ability to kind of teach you like some practical advice of how to do it. And so I started following her advice, was just, like just sit down, close your eyes, and just whatever comes to mind, just kind of go with it. And so I started doing that. And then, just experimenting, just kind of once I kind of got that permission in a sense from her teachings to play like this, because I'd already actually been doing things like this before, but I just never felt like they were valid
Mm-hmm.
because, it's like you don't hear any like, you know, any like well-known leaders telling you that you can do this. But,
Right.
since I kind of got that permission in a sense from her teachings, I was like, oh, so now I can just really just play with this and see what happens. And I just started doing things, like I would, imagining God, like I would, kind of chant verses out of the Bible, or I would say like, holy, 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 or whatever, and just kind of see what would happen. And, sometimes I would have really profound experiences, just chanting one word over and over
Mm-hmm.
again.
Wow. Yeah, there's so much to go into this. And it's like, from what I'm understanding, you're doing it mainly to, well, either connect, right? Well, connect to the divine, but also the imagination is like the portal to that, right? In a
Yes,
sense. So it's
exactly.
like you're just playing in the imagination, and that's you kind of channeling that divine nature, and that just connects you further. Do you ever do this exercise to like, visualize a future that you want to have, like manifest in a sense?
Yes, definitely. So like, quick story is like I had mentioned that I had did this amazing huge mural job with Dan Nelson at this church. And, you know, but before that happened was like my kids and I, we're in Bolivia, and we've, recently gotten the message that we're supposed to move to the US. And I don't know how things are going to happen, but I had just done like 4 murals at a children's home, and I loved it. And so
Mm.
I'm like, kids, this is what I want to do. And so I had my kids sit down, and for about 2 months every day, I would I would verbally walk them through the imagination of daddy painting walls and painting murals and stuff. And then also, and that's how, I ended up getting that huge job, for 10 months painting murals with Dan Nelson. But then also during that same time, we were really, really concerned about their mother and her legal status because she's Bolivian. She has a had a green card or permanent residence, but we got that in like 2012, and then we immediately left and went back to Bolivia. And so you really can't maintain that resident status unless you live in the country.
Mm-hmm.
So and we had already traveled before, and at the airport in Miami, immigration told us, they said, "Hey, you better make up your minds because we can take your green card away right now, but
Wow.
we're gonna let you in, but you need to decide, are you gonna live here, or are you gonna live there?" Well, we went back to
Hmm.
Bolivia. We just figured, no, our life is in Bolivia. Um, but then when we got word that, hey, we're supposed to move, we're like, oh crap, what's gonna happen now? And so I we were thinking about all kinds of crazy options, like maybe we should fly into Mexico first and then we'll cross the border in Mexico by land. I don't know. We're just all kinds of crazy options we're thinking. And but I start sitting down with my kids and I'm like, okay, we're going to imagine that we're at the airport. We're going through immigration. And the officer is just like, yeah, come on through. And he lets mommy through with no problems. And we just imagined ourselves like giving mommy a big hug and being thankful that she's on the other side. Like she made it through. So eventually, like, I got this idea. It was kind of like this, it's one of like those ideas that like should have come to me like before, but it didn't. And I was just thinking, well, what if we don't go through Miami? Like that's like kind of like the most logical route,
Mm-hmm.
you know. We have, Bolivian Airlines that goes directly from our city to Miami, and then from Miami it would just be another short flight up to Raleigh. But, it's like, what if we do something different? And so I started looking at other airlines, and it ended up being like this other airline that would take us from, I think it was from Bolivia to Panama, and then from Panama to Newark, New Jersey. And that's where we would do immigration. And then we would come to Raleigh, which is a much longer route, much longer way to do things. But it ended up price wise being even cheaper
Hmm.
than flying in through Miami and then getting another flight to Raleigh. And not only that, like we do it, we get to immigration in Newark, and we walk up to the immigration officer, and I hand him all of our passports, and then we hand him uh the children's mom's like green card, and he just kind of like looks through them, looks at her green card, and he's like, okay, come on in, no questions asked. No, he didn't like scan her card or look through it or make sure that it was like expired or not expired or anything like that, and just waved us on in. It was like, oh my gosh, like
Wow.
uh
So why did you, for example, like why weren't you doing this meditation by yourself? Why'd you get like the kids to do it too? What was
um
the
because
reasoning?
there's power in unity. You can manifest things on your own. That's great. um but it's just so much more powerful when you bring other people on board and agree with you. Like, this is the outcome that we want. And so it's kind of like when you look at frequencies. So if you have something that's resonating at 500 hertz or whatever, and then you have another thing that resonates at 500 hertz at the same time, then that will amplify the sound. So like if you have like a tuning fork and you hit it, it's only going to make the small sounds. But then if you put it in a box and that you hit it, then the vibration from the tuning fork will go into the box, and the box will resonate along with the tuning fork, and it amplifies the
Mm-hmm.
sound. It makes it much louder. And so I feel like it's the same way when you bring other people on board with you, and you agree on the same outcome, that you want, then it
Right.
amplifies it, and the message gets out into the universe or to God or the divine. I don't know exactly how it works, but yeah.
So you were doing this every day for 2 months with your kids, you said?
Yeah, yeah, more or
Wow.
less.
Wow. And what, okay, so I just want to make sure I understood your story. Was going through Miami gonna be like the same like scenario? Like, I mean, you would have to like show the card anyway, but it was just like an
Yes.
easier route for you guys in terms of money
It
or in terms
wasn't,
of,
yeah, well, migration in Miami is particularly more
okay.
strict
Okay, that's what I was
than in
thinking.
other places. Like I had remembered, I think what it was is in 2017, um the my wife at the time, and we had gone to Europe and come back, and it was the same deal. Like it was on that same trip that they had told her, we can take your green card away when we came in through Miami. But when we went to
Okay.
Europe and came back, and it was through, like, I don't know, JFK or something like that, nobody said anything, just
Mm.
welcomed us in. And so it was kind of like, oh, what if we don't go through Miami?
You
You
just got
know,
the other option in your head that
yeah,
was
like
kind of like invisible before in a way.
exactly. I just
Yeah.
couldn't, it just wouldn't even come to me. We're thinking of all these other crazy options that we
Yeah,
could
going through
do
Mexico.
going through Mexico. Like, what in the world? That's a stupid idea. But, yeah, like, and then, like, just as we're like doing these meditations, it just kind of hit me like, oh, what if we just go a completely different route than where we usually go?
Right. Wow. Yeah.
Um,
It's just being open. I guess that's an example.
right,
Being open to how things can come, how ideas can, how you can get that to that result of not being taken, the green card taken away. Like there's many
right,
ways
yeah,
you can do so many things, and it's like it's kind of back to the idea of like limitation in a sense, because it's like I mean also like on the other corner of that like we feel limited, but we're actually not limited. You know?
right, right.
Yeah.
We perceive ourselves as limited when we're not really,
There's this
you
greater
know,
intelligence, right? Whatever you want to call
exactly.
it, God, like that knows like
Yeah.
everything. And like how we're
And
gonna, how we're gonna know
yeah,
that unless we're open to allowing that to come through.
yeah. I just thought about, like, another thing that was happening at the time that I just gotten into was the Silva ultramine method.
Yes, I've heard of that. I actually
Yeah.
have the book, but I didn't read all of it. But yes, I know about it.
Yeah. So I got this audiobook on that and was listening to that, and how, like, I really liked how it explains about getting into like an alpha brainwave versus beta, and it teaches you, like, it basically teaches like a neuro linguistic programming to be able to get yourself to relax and get into that alpha state much faster. It takes a
Alpha
long
or theta? I don't know which one it is. I feel
I
like
would
it's
say
theta,
alpha is
or
what
maybe
they're
I'm wrong.
teaching in the what they're talking about the most in the Silva method.
Okay,
um but I'm actually not really sure if I'm getting down into theta or not, or alpha.
right.
But it's definitely a much more relaxed state of mind. So yeah, I started doing that, and I really enjoyed how they also talked about how your intentions matter. Like, what he was explaining is that higher intelligence wants to help you out, but your intentions have to be pure. Your intentions have to be for the greater good of humanity, not just for your own selfish gain. And I really like that. Whether or not that's actually the way it works, I don't know, but it definitely vibrated with me, or
To me, it
resonated with
seems
me.
like if you follow like your heart or your true calling, then that is gonna be for the best of everybody and for you
That's Yeah,
too.
exactly.
Might not be what you think. It might not be that fame that you want, but that might not actually be the best thing for everybody
Right,
and for yourself. But maybe it is. You don't know.
right. And it's hard
Yeah.
for us to tell what is best for the whole,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's kind of where um we get to, like, we might be trying to manifest one thing, one dream, but that dream's really not best for the whole, or it's not what we're really called to do. That's not what our real purpose is. And I think that when our dreams are not coming true, it may be because we need to redefine the dream, or look it over again and maybe reassess our motives, or reassess whether or not this is what we're actually called to do. Sometimes we're just thinking too limited, and the divine actually wants to take us on to much greater things, and that's why we're not manifesting that small little teeny dream that we wanted. And then other times it's we're thinking too grand, and like I was in Bolivia and I was trying to start this nonprofit organization to be able to go to children's homes and bring art workshops and murals and Pepito The Trashcans to all these children's home. And then I felt like at one point God was kind of like, "Hey Luke, do you really want to run a nonprofit organization?" And I was
Yeah.
like, no, I don't. Like, I am not an
Yeah.
organized person. I just want to go do fun, crazy, creative stuff, that's inspiring. And he's kind of like, yeah. So I had to
What do you
I had to
really want to
die to that.
do?
Yeah,
Yeah. What
exactly.
do you really want to do?
I had to die to that dream of starting a nonprofit, but that's not what I really wanted to do.
That
The
was one
nonprofit.
pathway in which your mind could imagine it at the
Right.
time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But there's, what I'm doing now, which is in a sense for profit, but I'm still getting to, provide for my children, which is definitely a decent cause, you know. And then I'm also getting to reach actually a lot more people than I probably could have reached, doing what I was doing.
All right. Well,
So,
beautiful sharing all of that. We probably should wrap this up soon because it's a bit.
yeah.
I told you like, it goes up to like 2 hours, like usually. Would you like to say anything else you'd like to share about Pepito and the Trash Can, where people can find you, or any like final remarks, anything you feel like you need to get out?
Well, I mean, I feel like I've probably talked way more than I should. So
No,
yeah,
I loved all of it.
thank
I'm
you.
like, tell me everything.
Definitely thank you for being patient with me and letting me talk in circles. But yeah, I mean, Pepito and the Trash Cans it's an album. It's out on Spotify and all those, streaming platforms. And you can find it there, as well as the rest of my music. And yeah, you can find me at lukevandegriff.com if you want to see some of my paintings and other artwork.
And I'll link that down below in the notes.
Yeah,
So
appreciate it.
easy access. All right, awesome.
So,
Thank you so much for coming on, and we'll see what happens next. We're just gonna have to be on the tightrope.
there we go. Yeah, and the
There
tension
we go.
between. That's right.
Yes.
Thank you, Maya. This has been wonderful.
Thank you. All right, I'm gonna stop.
You are awakening me. So let's come alive.